Garden is our next speaker. And she's doing the speech number 8. Some of the things that you're going to want to look for is a visual aids that are appropriate for her message. So she's going to have 2 visual aids. And let's see, information. Most of you celebrated Easter yesterday. Debbie has been celebrating Passover for the last week, having eaten matzah for the past 7 days. She saw an opportunity to educate you on the mysteries of matzah. What is it? And why do Jewish people eat it for an entire week during Passover? This is Debbie's 8th speech and is entitled Matzah versus Crackers.
All right.
Right.
I gotta get set up, guys. Just wait a second.
Oh, yeah.
Can everybody read that?
I am joking. So.
Okay. Food. Food is a favorite subject of many people, me included. Crackers. There's a variety of crackers in the market today. If you do the grocery shopping for your families, you know that there are dozens of different kinds of crackers that you can choose on the market. And they're all really good. But have you thought about the history of what's behind a cracker?
No.
What are they? Why are they? And how did they come to be? I'm going to educate you a little bit on that today. Also, matzah. This is the Hebrew for matzah. In case anyone did not read it. What is matzah? Again, what's the history of matzah? So I'm going to give you now a quick education on both the crackers and the matzah. And we'll start with the crackers. The concept of a cracker actually started in Massachusetts in 1792. A baker there decided to bake a flatbread. So the cracker that we know today started out as a flatbread. It was made with flour and water. He called it a pilot bread. Now the sailors liked this pilot bread. They took it with them on their trips because it had a very long shelf life, very similar to the Twinkies of today, which have a shelf life of about, 50 years? But they called it hardtack, and they called it Seabiscuits. So we go from 1792 over to 1801. Again in Massachusetts, again another baker. This baker was cooking the Seabiscuit, or the hardtack, and he started to overcook it, and it started to burn a little bit. So he pulled it out of the oven very quickly, and as he pulled it out, he noticed a crackling sound coming from the flatbread. Then he tasted it and discovered it didn't taste bad, a little more cooked. So he came up with the concept of cracker. He named it cracker after the crackling sound, and he started actually baking the flatbread a little longer to become a crisp cracker. He actually sold this idea and this name later in his life to a company that today we know of as Nabisco. Bet you guys didn't know that. Okay, matzah. Let's go on to the matzah. What is it? Well, matzah is a cracker. Like, sort of. It's unleavened bread. It's made with flour and water. The basic difference between crackers and matzah is that when the bakers roll out the matzah, and they roll it very, very thin, or roll out the dough, they pierce it with a fork, and what that does, it prevents the flour and water from rising. Because matzah has to be unleavened bread. The matzah actually is very similar to the Southwest Asian lavash bread and the Indian chapati bread. Matzah is used as a substitute during Passover for any bread-like products or any leavened products that the Jewish people might want to eat. What does matzah look like? If you're very religious, this is the type of matzah that you eat. It is handmade and it is round. And it's very expensive. The average person who is not extremely Orthodox we'll eat more matzah that looks like this. It's still kosher for Passover, but it's squares and it's not made by hand, it's made by a machine. So those are the two types of matzahs, and this box will not stand up, so I'm not going to leave it standing up. Well, where does matzah come from? Why is it used? The word, the name, the concept, the practice actually starts in the book of Genesis. And it is mentioned throughout the entire Hebrew Bible. But what's the meaning of matzah? Well, historically, matzah came about when the Jewish people were slaves in Egypt, and they had to suddenly leave Egypt because Pharaoh finally said, go, get out. And they took him at his word, and they left very quickly. They took their dough, their cracker dough, and they put it on their back so it would bake in the sun. And that's actually how the concept of matzah came about. And it's also can be referred to sometimes as the manna from heaven that a lot of different religions talk about. Symbolically, matzah represents redemption from freedom, redemption or freedom. It's the poor man's bread. It reminds us, with humility, not to forget about being slaves. And there's also a Christian belief. The matzah was used by Jewish in the Last Supper. So the communion wafers that a lot of Catholic and Protestant sects use is flat, just like the matzah was in commemoration of that. So how do you make matzah? Well, I have a handy-dandy recipe here. I know it's too little for you guys to read, so I have samples of matzah in here along with the recipe. So if you'd like, Susie, to start this down and pass it around, you may each take one. How do you eat it? Well, you can eat it plain. It tastes okay. I like to put butter and honey on it. Makes it taste better. You can put spaghetti sauce and cheese on it and melt it, and you have a matzah pizza. You can mix it with eggs and fry it in a fried pan, and it becomes what we call matzah brei. Interestingly enough, in Israel, and this is an article that was in yesterday's Register, the Arab people who live in Israel like matzah more than the Jewish people who live in Israel. They find it a treat, and they enjoy eating it a lot more than everybody else.
Because they don't have to.
Because they don't have to, that's probably true. In conclusion, matzah and crackers are very similar. Both are thin, unleavened bread. The biggest difference is religious and symbolic. Crackers are eaten all year. Matzah is specifically eaten during Passover, although some people do eat it all year. So I hope you enjoyed the sample of the matzah that I'm passing around. And if you're industrious and want to try the recipe, please let me know how it turns out. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie, for that very